A bigger course, more breeze, flat water at the spiritual home of the F50 Cats. Bermuda looks set to be the antidote to the previous event in Rio. What carried over though was drama, breakdowns and surprise performances.
Australia arrived in Bermuda leading the standings after a dominant win in Rio.
And I don't think boat speed's going to be much of a factor. All these teams will be able to sail the boat at very close to 100% of its capabilities.
Emirates GBR turned up desperate to bounce back after a disastrous Brazilian weekend.
Generally quite windy, pretty flat water, so for the F50s it's absolutely iconic place to sail, so very excited to be back here in Bermuda racing.
The United States had raised their game and Sweden's new look Artemis team were out to prove their first podium in Rio was no fluke.
What's awesome about this venue is that you can really push the boats hard. You can fly really high, you can really find performance in the boats.
But what they all wanted to do and what happened next were worlds apart.
The surprises started with a technical fault aboard Artemis that forced them to retire from day one before the first race had even got underway. And when it did, the second surprise was to see the US SailGP team lead the charge to the first mark, with the Canadian North Star team in second and with the German team in third. And it was this order that remained at the finish. The dominant and consistent performances from teams like the Australians, the British and Spanish have almost become the template this season, but in this race they were buried in the pack. To be fair, the American performance is one that's been improving all season after their impressive win in Sydney. We also know that the Canadians have been able to deliver results in the past, while the German team has proved itself on occasions too. The Americans did it again at the start of the second race, but this time they couldn't make it stick. Tom Slingsby's Bond's Flying Ruse muscled through with Rockwell Racing chasing in second and the Spanish Los Galos in third. And by the finish it was the same three that took the podium positions, with Rockwell slipping into second. This was no mean feat given the technical problems with their foil lift system. And there was more drama and breakdowns astern. On the French boat, Glenn Ashby broke his leg during a manoeuvre, while the Italians also had technical problems. The third race of the day saw the Australians get the best start, only to be overtaken by the Spanish, who were once again demonstrating just how good they are when their stars align. The Germans were also out to prove that they deserved a place on the podium by scoring another third. In 3 races, there have been 3 separate winners. The final race of the day saw the Italians come to life at the start to set the pace, with the Australians and the Americans hot on their heels. Emirates GBR had also sprung into action after spending the previous 3 races buried in the pack and seemingly unable to break free. After a better start and pushing through, they'd hauled themselves into third. But a boundary penalty forced them back to fourth, before then losing a place to the Spanish pushed them even further back into fifth. The reset that Dylan Fletcher and crew had been looking for this weekend was still eluding them. Instead, it was the Australians that took first, with the Italians in second and the Americans in third. While some had experienced system problems during the day, the Swedish issue turned out to be a more physical and arguably more worrying one.
Yeah, we had a failure on the boat today. I'm not really sure why or how it broke, but we managed to take off, do 1 tack, and then sailed for about 15 seconds on starboard and heard this loud bang. And the forestay, there's the tube that holds the forestay out from the front beam, the little bowsprit. It failed around the connection point, so the whole carbon just mushroomed around it, around where they put the shim in there. I think it was a little bit short, so they had to put a shim in there to get it to the correct length to match the fleet, and it failed around that shim.
Yeah, for us as sailors, this is why we compete, as this sort of racing. It's these boats are just perfect for those conditions, sort of 13 to 17 knots, flat water, crystal clear blue water, nice weather. big crowd cheering everyone on. So that's it's just why we do it. It doesn't get any better as a sailor than conditions like that.
Yeah, I think just all around a bit of a disappointing day. We just felt like we got bounced around in the pack and never really had many opportunities to stretch our legs, and maybe tried a little too hard at the end.
Day one had proved how consistency matters more than outright wins. Australia weren't dominating every single race, but they just kept scoring points. Day two was to deliver a different challenge though, as the breeze started to drop. The Spanish opened proceedings with a superb start, with the French and Australians in pursuit. Leading the first leg is always a big benefit in SailGP, but this time the leading three managed to break away from the main gaggle, allowing them to enjoy relatively clear air where they could extend their leads even further. By the finish, the Spanish took another win, with the Australians in second and the French in third. By now, the Australians clearly knew where they wanted to hang out, and showed this by taking the lead from the start. And by the finish, it was the Swiss in second and the French in third. At this stage, it seemed clear that barring a disaster, the Australians had booked a place in the finals. The Spanish were also looking likely to make it. Behind them, there was less certainty. The German team were hanging in there, but they had to deliver one more time. Winning the penultimate race delivered just that. Finishing second and third, the Spanish and Australians confirmed their places too. The breeze had dropped a few notches further, increasing the pressure on teams to keep their machines flying. The breeze was puffy and shifty too, adding to the workload. But Slingsby and co made it look easy once again, timing the start to perfection and delivering the tricky moves flawlessly every time. Behind them, it was a tighter match between the Spanish and German teams. With a win in the bag for the Bond's Flying Ruse, the pressure went all the way to the wire for the others as Los Galos pulled off a superb and gutsy tack around the final mark in the face of Germany Deutsche Bank.
It's nice to sort of put the feeling of the team into the results, because so often you sort of feel like the team's really strong, as I did even at the Sydney event where we didn't have a good event. I felt like the team was super strong, but we weren't able to convert that into results. But it's nice here. We're actually getting the results the team sort of feels they deserve, and yeah, we're sailing so well as a unit, and just the team isn't just the sailors. Everyone behind the scenes are just so amazing, and we've got such a strong unit.
I think it was interesting because we had also a couple of races together with the Aussies, and I think both teams we had very clear what the ideal track was around the course, and it was all about the start, and they executed perfectly. You know, they didn't create any passing lanes, and yeah, hats off to them.
Certainly felt as though we left a lot on the table, and being honest, fourth feels like the best we could have done this weekend. Not sailing to the level we'd like, but we were chipping away and did what we could.
Winning 3 of the 5 events this season says it all really, especially when you think of how dominant the Australians have been in SailGP overall. Seeing them on the podium is no surprise, but how they get there is often more so. Sure, they have boat speed, yes, they are very slick around the corners and know where they want to be on the course, but their real skill as things get tighter is being able to recover from difficult positions. As yet, no one does this better. The Spanish continue to impress and make it clear that they're serious contenders. They've been on the podium 4 times this season. Again, enough said. For the German team, finishing third is a big step forward and the first time that they've been at this level.
What is a great moment for us to have a good result coming in now. We felt the wave is going up again for us, and the last couple of events we're building up to this. A bit sad that we couldn't really make it in the last start off the line quickly, because we felt we had a good speed around the course today. So next time.
In the overall standings, the Bond's Flying Ruse continue to lead, but now with a buffer of 10 points over second place Emirates GBR, who are being pressed hard by the Spanish, just 1 point behind. Consistent performance has been behind the USA team's steady rise, and they now lie just 3 points behind the Spanish. But aside from the points, what stands out for me after this weekend is how the racing could breathe on a course that was larger and without the fickle corners close to the shore. Yes, there were shifts, but surely that's part of the sport. But Bermuda demonstrated once again why it's considered to be a top racing venue. It's just a shame it's so tricky to get to. Still, that's probably part of what makes it so special. Next stop will doubtless see a step change. New York. A spectacular backdrop, yes. Drama, breakdowns and gossip, well, very probably. But compared to Bermuda as an open venue that's easy to read with flat water and no tide, yeah, not so much. Instead, it's usually a nail-biting scramble to the top. See you then.